All right, welcome to another eBay unboxing. So my Saint Reliquary and Relics collection is actually growing. We just got Saint Teresa of Lisieux. I can never say French properly. Although I did a DNA test and I found out that my life was a lie. And I'm half Scottish. Well, actually not half Scottish anymore. I'm half Italian, and then like 20% Scottish and like 40% Basque from Spain and France. Very interesting what you find out on Ancestry.com. So we got, I should be pronouncing French perfectly. So we got Saint Teresa of Lisieux, and this is a three-piece relic set. Yes, I called it a three-piece set. It's three relics in one, and now we got another one. Let's open it up, and let me get the scissors. Here we go. We're gonna get the scissors. Now I wonder if people in the post office who work for the post office actually realize they're handling the bones of saints. Would they be creeped out if they knew? I don't know. What do you think? All right, we just unboxed this also. This was an eBay score. I don't generally collect medals, but found out this one was worth over $400, all for under 20 bucks. All right, and let's see if we got another sleeper, which actually I paid a little bit more than, my usual sleepers. You know what I'm saying? It was a lot higher. For general, I like to spend under 50 bucks on sleepers. Generally, if you screw up and it's really not a sleeper, then you don't really lose that much, if you know what I mean. But this one I was willing to take a chance on, and if we can only get it open. And we'll do this in fast motion. All right, so let's get it opened. Oh, wow, it was hard to get it open. So we have this crucifix. It's actually quite heavy. It's not humongous, but it's palm size. We have ebonized wood panels with plated metal. I don't think it's real gold plated. And sometimes you'll find a country of origin on them. Generally, these would have been made in France, Italy, or Germany. These are reliquaries, and a reliquary is something that actually holds relics. And so it doubles as a crucifix and also a reliquary. I can't see what that says. I am blind right now. Let's see. I think it says France, if I'm not mistaken. Now, this would have been hung by a rosary, generally from a nun or a priest's belt rosary, or from the neck. Very interesting. Now, I saw this and I love these. These have these little compartments, and you don't want to lose the screw or you're screwed. Okay, so, all right, let's get this open. I'm going to put the screw in a safe spot, okay? And we're going to open this together, if we can. These things are never easy to do on camera. Okay, there we go, there we go. All right. So what the heck is it? All right, so I told you it has something to do with relics. And let's zoom in if we can. Now this is what I like to see when I collect relics. 9 times out of 10, the original documents that came with them are long gone. But when you see this wax seal or stamp, you know that this was approved by the holy people. And when I say that, usually the postulator general who studies these things and makes sure that they're accurate and they're real, they will put a red seal or wax stamp. And this is actually pretty cool because I collect these in crucifixes, and I've never gotten one yet with a wax seal in it. So this is telling me this is certainly authentic. I think I see someone's initials scratched into this. I just noticed that. Do you see that? Oh, wait. I think it's upside down. M. See, you always find things, M-R, I believe that says. So that was somebody's initials that they scratched in there. And what do we have? It says Teresa de Avila, ex habit. Oh, can we see this? You don't want to see the wrinkles on my fingers. Ex habitus or habite, and that's the ex habit. And she was known to wear brown. She was a Carmelite nun, and a lot of these are fake. A lot of these will be also known as ex indumentises, meaning like ex pieces of cloak from their whatever they wore, the nun's habit. And 9 times out of 10, it's just a piece of cloth that the church cut into a teeny tiny square, touched to a first class relic, and they stick it in there and they say ex indumentis. but the older ones are generally actually real. They're authentic. And I can tell that this is authentic, especially since we have this wax seal saying so. And so this is actually a second-class relic. And I'll tell you the difference between the different relics if you haven't followed me yet. For all my regular subscribers, I'm sorry if this is redundant. But okay, so first-class relic. Let's just zoom out a bit, a hair. First-class relic is something that actually is of a saint's body, whether it be a bone, a piece of tooth, a brain, a piece of the brain, a piece of the fingernail, a piece of the skin, a piece of the heart, a piece of the lungs. You get my drift, right? And a second-class relic is something that they wore or touched in life. So, for example, the habit, a pair of slippers, a pair of stockings, a pair of shoes, a Bible, a chalice, a veil. So it's actually something they wore and touch in life. And a third-class relic is when you take, let's go ahead and do this. Hold on. All right, you're going to take your regular crucifix, all right? And this one's an antique one. This is quite lovely. This is a pardon crucifix that Pope Pius X actually made during his reign. And this is actually also known as the battlefield crucifix. And so we're going to touch it to a first-class relic. Let's go ahead. And we're going to actually touch it to St. Teresa. Now, this has just become a third-class relic. So there you go. That's your explanation. I hope it helped you. And all right, so here we go. This is quite cool. So let's zoom in, if we can, and check out this habitus. And we're trying to get a focus. We never can get a focus when we need one. Just going to put my ugly fingernail there. And this camera, do not get Samsung. Samsung, you stink. All right, come on. Come on, Samsung. Don't embarrass me here. I'll be back. Okay, it's now you're gonna see all the wrinkles in my finger. But yeah, Samsung Ultra S22 Ultra, you stink. And there we go. We have, look at that, the habit. And that's really cool. Now, why I like this saint? This saint was a mystic. Now, I really, actually, I think the best saints, well, the ones that I like the best are mystics. And what's a mystic? Basically magical. Like, think of magical, levitating, prophecy, stigmata. Think about like all the crazy stuff that you see in movies, some horror and some not. But there we go. Look at that. So I'm going to touch that. And wow. Okay. Do you think the post office people even realized that they were carrying this around? That is quite cool. I'm going to put the screw back in there, and then we're going to talk about this particular saint. Now, I just wanted to get a better, closer look for you guys, but yeah, this is real. Most of the ex-indumentises are really fake, and they're really third-class relics. I'll show you an example of one in a moment, but let's try to check out the habit. Look at that. That is really real. Okay, so this is, I think, in my opinion, just as important as a first-class relic. Of course, first-class relics are the most valuable in terms of not only value with money, but, you know, valuable in faith and religion with the Catholic Church. But I think this is something really special. So I always put a tassel near my holy relics, just so I know which one, the difference between the holy relics in my collection and the non-holy relics. So I always throw on a dark red tassel with it. All right, so there's ours. Here's our battle cross. This is from the early 20th century, probably anywhere between 1905-ish to about the teens, to about World War I. I believe this to be a World War I chaplain crucifix. And again, this is our Pope Pius X. This is the pardon crucifix. And I stuck medals on it, and I'll show you an ex indumentis, the type that you'll find all day long, that say that this is a relic. And it's, I mean, it really has a piece of cloth in there. Do you see that? See that teeny tiny piece of cloth? And a lot of relics will say that it was a saint's, you know, a saint's real habit. And it's not. It'll say like ex indumentis, and you'll think, oh, it's St. Anthony's, you know, outfit. Or it's St. Teresa of Lisieux. Or it's, you know what I mean? And it's not. It's just a piece of cloth that they touched to a first-class relic. And this is correct. The ones that you will see. This is a modern. This is a modern St. Teresa of Lisieux medal. But for the most part, you will find a lot of these on eBay selling for $500, $600, $700, $800 ex injumentus. But it's actually one of these little like random generic pieces of cloth that they just touched to a first class relic, and that's it. So be careful when you buy these. All right, so this famous Spanish nun, we have her photo on the right, and her eyes, right? Don't they look like they're stirring. And she actually, this is the crazy stories. We're going to read about the levitating nun. Okay, so here we go. Here she is, again, with those dreamy eyes looking up. And yeah, she actually was really interesting. Okay, so one of the best known levitators of the early modern age, and one of the most unwilling, is Saint Teresa of Avila. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. Teresa de Ahumada I can't do Spanish. Ahumada y Cepeda, 1515 to 1582, became a Carmelite nun in her teens at the convent of the Incarnation in her native Avila, a walled city in Old Castile. During her 20s, she was plagued by an illness no doctor could properly diagnose or cure. Brought to death's door, literally, she was taken for dead and readied for a burial. Oh my God. Can you imagine? If one of us, oh my God, but regained consciousness only a few hours before being lowered into the grave. Teresa remained paralyzed afterward for quite some time and eventually recovered, albeit slowly and painfully. A lukewarm nun for many years after returning to her convent, according to her own disparaging estimation, Teresa began to experience visions and raptures in her 40s. As these intensified quickly and dramatically, she naturally came under suspicion of being either demonically influenced or a brazen fraud. At the same time, however, many around her were convinced that her experiences were genuinely divine in origin. Consequently, her superiors ordered her to write a detailed account of her life and her ecstasies. No, it's not what you're thinking. Yes, there are ecstasies, but not the kind you're thinking. Okay, under the watchful eye of the Inquisition. That text, which came to be known as her Vida or autobiography, is an attempt to convince everyone that her remarkable experiences are truly supernatural. And an essential part of the narrative is Teresa's constant emphasis on her own humility and on the pain and embarrassment caused by the ecstasies she experienced in public. That's why her eyes are so dreamy. Or which became public knowledge, especially those ecstasies in which she levitated. Teresa's raptures and levitations are unique for several reasons, three of which are most significant. First, no other Christian levitator has provided as full a first-person account or described and analyzed the experience in such much detail as Teresa. Second, no other levitator has complained as often and as loudly about levitating as Teresa. And third, few other levitators have brought about an end to levitations as suddenly and dramatically as Teresa. I think Padre Pio was a levitator. Obviously, her detailed analysis of her own levitations cannot be taken as empirical proof of the reality of her levitations, but they do provide an exceptionally clear window into her perceptions, or at least into how she wanted others to understand the phenomenon. And as of yet, no other Christian levitator has ever surpassed Teresa on this account. In her Vita, Teresa tends to use the term arrobamiento, or rapture, for the experiences that take her into the heavenly realm of the divine. Sometimes, however, she also uses arrebatamiento, or ravishment, for such experiences, or suggests that arrebatamiento is in fact a kind of arrobamiento, as she does when she says, while I was reciting a hymn, there came to me arrobamiento so suddenly that nearly took me out of myself, something I could not doubt, for it is so clear this was the first time that the Lord had granted me the favor of any kind of arrobamiento. Regardless of the term used, Teresa makes it clear that whether one levitates or not during an arrobamiento, the body is often affected intensely, even violently, primarily through the sense of deprivation and paralysis, and a lapse into a trance-like state accompanied by physical after effects that linger for a while. I'll tell you guys a story. When I was a girl, my mom told me that she used to get paralyzed in her sleep. She could not move. She would lay in the bed fully awake and could not move her arms, her legs, her head, her neck, her fingers, her toes. She would be frozen, but she was fully coherent and knew everything that was going on around her. And it happens to my daughter, who is 23 years old. She has these sleep paralysis. Is this what she's explaining to us? I don't know. It says the body is often affected intensely, even violently, primarily through the sense deprivation and paralysis, and a lapse into trance-like state accompanied by physical after effects that linger for a while. Let us now return to raptures and to their most common traits. I can attest that after a rapture, my body often felt so light that it seemed to weigh nothing at all, and sometimes this was overwhelming, so that I could hardly tell if my feet were touching the ground, for during the entire rapture, the body remains as if dead and unable to do anything itself. And in whatever way it was positioned when seized by the rapture, that is how the body stays, whether standing, whether sitting, or with the hands open or clasped. Could she be explaining body sleep paralysis? This is quite interesting. And here we go. Here's a painting. And is there any more info? Here we go. We got more. This state of suspended animation brings the body close to death. Ooh, this is scary. And takes quite a toll on it. In one passage, Teresa says that during the raptures, one can feel like someone who is being strangled with a rope around their neck, still struggling to catch a breath. That sounds like a panic attack to me. I get them all the time. Again and again, Teresa stresses the physical dimensions of her raptures, probably because it was the visibly alarming way her body behaved that drew attention to her mystical experiences. She needed to explain what others were witnessing as something inherently spiritual rather than any of the awful alternatives, demonic fits, mere fakery, mental illness, or a physical malady. Based on her own descriptions of her body's response to rapture, others could easily mistake some such reactions which would instantly paralyze her and leave her as rigid and insensate and a marble statue for mere cataleptic seizures. Interesting. I got to Google that. The hands get freezing cold and sometimes stretched out stiffly like pieces of wood, and the body stays in whatever position it is when the rapture hits, be it standing or kneeling, and it seems as if the soul has forgotten to animate the body. Teresa also claims that all sensory input ceases to function, as if the connection between body and soul is temporarily sundered. At the highest point of rapture, she says, one will neither see, nor hear, nor perceive. Oh my God, that is terrifying. And this is because the soul is then so closely united with God that none of the soul's faculties are able to perceive or know what is taking place. Even if the eyes remain open, she adds, one neither perceives nor notices what one sees. Oh my God. Oh my God, what this woman went through. Elsewhere, she also highlights the effects of this near-death experience on the body, not only while the event is unfolding, but also afterward. Occasionally, I come close to losing my pulse altogether. According to those of my sisters who have sometimes found me like this, with my ankles disjointed and my hands so stiff that sometimes I cannot even clasp them together, until the next day my wrists and my body will continue to hurt as if my joints had been torn asunder. Wow. Okay, there she is there. Oh, I feel bad for her. Oh my goodness, it's not extraordinary to have this stuff happening to you. Like a lot of people will be like, oh, it's cool, man. I'd really love to levitate. That's why you smoke pot, right? Okay, not, I don't, but, oof. Okay, stressing the raw physicality of these experiences alongside their exalted spiritual nature, and again, flummoxed by the inadequacy of human language, Teresa also dwells repeatedly on the paradoxical intertwining of pain and bliss, both bodily and spiritual. These raptures seem like the very threshold of death, she avers, but the suffering they cause brings such joy with it that I do not know of anything comparable. Consequently, she adds, these raptures are violent, delectable martyrdom. Elsewhere, Teresa confesses that during those days when the raptures were constant, she went about as if stupefied, and adds, I did not want to see or speak with anyone, but only to hug my pain, which caused me greater bliss than can be found in the whole of creation. Discerning when Teresa is speaking of the spiritual effects of rapture rather than the physical ones is often difficult, if not impossible. But in some passages, she explains that trying to resist raptures takes intense physical effort, further reinforcing her claim that her body and soul share in these events with equal intensity and making it abundantly clear that levitations are nearly as impossible to resist as purely spiritual raptures. I have wanted to resist many, many times and have put all my strength behind it, especially with raptures in public and often also ones in private, when I feared I was being deceived. Sometimes I could resist somewhat at the edge of exhaustion. Afterwards, I would be completely worn out, like someone who has fought against a powerful giant. At other times, resisting has been impossible, and my soul has been carried away instead, and quite often my head too, along with it, without being able to stop it, and sometimes my whole body too, which has even been lifted off the ground. In other instances, Teresa explicitly refers to levitations and what she had to say about the inability to resist these favors, as well as the physical trauma involved in resisting, is basically identical. When I tried to resist these raptures, she says, it seemed to me that I was being lifted up by the force beneath my feet so powerful that I know nothing to which I can compare it, for it came with a much greater intensity than my other spiritual experience, and I felt as if I were being torn to shreds, for it is a mighty struggle, and when all is said and done, there is no point to it if this is the Lord's will, for his power can never be overcome by another. Oh my God, very, very interesting. Really extremely interesting. It says Teresa's stress on the irresistibility of raptures and levitations ultimately needs to be placed in the context of the power relationship between her and her confessors and superiors, as much as in the context of whatever she might have felt or thought about the power relationship between her and God. Urged to resist her raptures when they first began and blamed by her confessors for not preventing them, Teresa needed to highlight the issue of resistance in the autobiographical account she was ordered to write. And also she needed to underscore the point that she continually begged God to refrain from showering her with raptures, especially those in which she levitated in the presence of eyewitnesses who would immediately broadcast the news of the wondrous miracle they just had seen. As Teresa saw it, it is the wider that tales of her levitation spread, and the more the adulation of her intensified. Adulation, I don't know. You know what I mean. The worse for her and the church as a whole, outlining the experience that can be expected in the penultimate stage of the mystical ascent, the sixth of the 7 mansions that she charts in the interior castle in 1577. Teresa has to say this: in this mansion, raptures occur continually without any way of avoiding them, even in public. And then the persecutions and murmurings follow, and even though the soul wants to be free from fears, she is never free of them because so many people foist them on her, especially her confessors. Her efforts to control her levitations were much more than purely verbal or limited to prayer. According to eyewitnesses, there was a brute physicality to her resistance. Domingo Banez, a prominent Dominican theologian who served as one of Teresa's spiritual advisors, said he and many other people once saw Teresa levitate immediately after receiving communion, and that she clung to a grill in the church, greatly distressed, and begged God, Lord, oh my goodness, this is crazy, and begged God out loud, Lord, for something that is unimportant as putting an end to these favors which you would shower me, do not allow a woman as wicked as me to be mistaken for one that is good. Others, too, would testify that they saw her clinging to the mats on the choir floor and rising up in the air with them in her hands, which she did to signal the other nuns to pull on her habit and bring her back down. And that comes to what we have here, boys and girls. And that's where the habit comes from. Could this have been one of the habits that she was wearing when she levitated and the other nuns pulled her back down? Could this be that amazing? I realize that it may not be actually something that, was used in one of her raptures, that she was pulled down by other nuns from this very habit that we see here in this crucifix. But the imagination goes wild, doesn't it, boys and girls? So this is actually, to me, as precious as a first-class relic, this second-class relic. Her habit that she wore, who knows, while she was actually going through one of those raptures. Thanks for watching. See you guys all soon, and so long, and we'll get to the next unboxing shortly.